we are go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
Does it always smell like this? How does the wind ever get in here?
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your mission commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen.
And on this episode of Planet 8, we're going to be taking a look at the sword and sorcery films from the definitive decade of the 1980s. Straight away, we're going to kick it up to the satellite. Reconnaissance Officer Karen, what do you have for us this episode?
Well, Larry, the 1980s was an interesting time, especially if you were alive during the 1980s, like we all
Indeed.
were.
Oh, yes.
And one of the things that is notable about the 80s is this flood of sword and sorcery films. So when we're talking sword and sorcery, you got to have two things in the movie. You got to have a sword. Well, you got to have some kind of sword play, some sort of medieval type weapons flying around. And you got to have some sort of sorcery, some sort of magic. It could be a wizard, a spellcaster, or it could be magic in the form of enchantments, enchanted land or space or whatever. So
a mage or
a mage,
something
yeah.
like that. There you go.
It could be almost anything that's, otherworldly and magical. So these sword and sorcery films just seem to be popping out of the woodwork in the 80s. And, there could be a lot of reasons for this. I kind of think the main push was that Dungeons and Dragons came along in the late 70s. At least the more popular form of it, the one that a lot of us first encountered. I know as a kid when I was, 12 or so, that really cool boxed set, the basic set, started popping up in stores. And then, you got advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and it kind of became a taboo thing. And so then, you wanted to play it even more. So that was really popular for a while. You still had the popularity of Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, which had started really getting popular with the youth culture in the 60s and was really popular in the 70s. You would see all the Hildebrandt calendars in the bookstores when you would go in. And then that also led to an increased popularity in fantasy art as a whole. Boris Vallejo was really popular. And of course, Frazetta was always popular. And so I just think it was this combination of things that sort of pushed these sword and sorcery movies, into production and they were just being cranked out in the 80s. You were kind of tripping over them if you were going to the movie theater. And I would say by and large, like most things in life, 90% of them were crap.
And welcome to our episode.
And welcome to our episode, kids. You know what you're getting into when you come to Planet 8. But, there were some that were actually either really, really good or at least really, really interesting. And so, we're going to talk about those ones that, we found interesting or enjoyable or at least, worth a few hours of our time. And with that, I'll segue into my top pick today, which is Excalibur from 1981. Interestingly, an R-rated film. A number of these sword and sorcery films were R-rated. Right. And this was directed by John Boorman, who I already have great esteem for because he made the film Zardoz, which, I hold in as great works of art of our time. So John Boorman had wanted to do a live-action film version of Lord of the Rings for many years. Even before Zardoz, when he was working on that, he had been making designs for Lord of the Rings. He had, acquired rights. He had talked to Tolkien, and unfortunately, and it's a long story, he wound up losing, or the studio he was working with wound up losing the rights. And so his attention shifted to the story of King Arthur. And so that is how we wound up with Excalibur. And I absolutely love this movie. It's like in my top 10 of all movies, not just sword and sorcery or fantasy films. The way it is put together, the production values, the way it's filmed. I mean, it's like you have this amazing lighting on the both outdoor and indoor sets that gives it a really dreamlike quality. Mm-hmm. There's this like green lighting, almost like an emerald lighting that appears on like Excalibur and the knights at the beginning that shows like they're, something good is shining on them, that they're doing right and everything. But then after Lancelot and Guinevere, have their affair and Arthur loses Excalibur, then the land starts to go bad and Arthur fails in health, and the light diminishes. It's really interesting how they kind of show all this just through the way they film stuff. So it's a very visually interesting film. And of course, the costumes with the armor and stuff are really fantastic. You got some great actors in these roles. Nicole Williamson as Merlin is probably the best thing in the movie. Helen Mirren is in there as Morgan Le Fay. It's a really young Liam Neeson as one of the knights. Patrick Stewart is Guinevere's father. There's just a lot of really well executed sequences, well acted, and the soundtrack is really fantastic too. Trevor Jones, this was his first feature film as the composer, and he had to work around. There was an insistence by Borman in putting in certain classical music like Wagner. And so he had to find a way to make his music match up with these pieces of classical music in the film. But I've got the soundtrack and I listen to it all the time. It's a really, really great soundtrack as far as the kind of mood that he created for the film. It lends a lot to the movie. I don't know what you guys think about Excalibur.
It's one of my favorites as well. I didn't get a chance to see it this go round, but I've seen it numerous times. I have, I own a DVD. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to note that Liam Neeson, these actors were very young. Yeah. Obviously it was back in the 80s. They weren't as established as they are now.
Right. I think this was like his third movie. It was, he hadn't done very much.
Yeah, and I loved the way that they utilized Merlin in this. I wish there was more. And just I don't want to say that some of the actors overacted, but some of the actors overacted.
Oh yeah, well
but it worked.
Right.
The story that they were telling, it's almost like operatic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the story of Excalibur and Merlin and Arthur and Guinevere and Lancelot, Uther Pendragon. I mean, that whole scene where, he uses Merlin to basically, he raped, Arthur's mother, for lack of a better word. Merlin casting a spell so that she thought he was her husband, or, and that scene of him riding across the bridge, and that kind of like, it wasn't spooky music, but yeah, it was, the music was very, very, well placed throughout the film. I didn't know that about, trying to match it up with like Wagner and stuff. Mm-hmm. Karen, that's interesting.
Well, and that whole sequence where Merlin does that, I think really, right from the beginning of the movie, it tells you that, Merlin isn't really human. He's part of something, right. Some otherworldly race,
mm-hmm.
And they make the point later on that, Christianity is coming or is there, and his kind is disappearing.
Yeah, his time is finished. some of the film, you mentioned it was rated R. It was kind of hard to watch. Sometimes, it was the 80s. But it's interesting. A lot of the stuff that I've seen on later movies or actually series. What was the one on HBO with Khaleesi and
Game of Thrones?
Yeah, the Game of Thrones. Some of the
you couldn't remember Game of Thrones?
Yeah. To this day, one of my favorite lines from Excalibur is, Arthur's like, Merlin, what are you? What are you, Merlin? And I'm paraphrasing here, but Merlin lifts up his arms and there's like lightning and thunder. First he says, a dream to some. Cue lightning and thunder. A nightmare to others. I was telling everybody, if I ever win the lottery, I will be a dream to some and a nightmare to others. But interestingly enough, I have a friend who cannot stand not opera music, but like the music from The Omen, music from Excalibur, where it's like a choir, bum 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 bum. It just freaks her out, so she can't watch films when they're like, doing that little staccato or soprano or whatever music. And I'm like, that's a shame because Excalibur is such a fun movie to watch.
That's an odd phobia to have.
It is. And you're talking to a man that has a very odd phobia himself, which I will not divulge because Superman never lets anyone know that kryptonite is his kryptonite. So anyway.
You reminded me, though, when you were talking about the rape scene and some of the violence. I actually saw this in the theater because I wasn't old enough to see an R-rated movie yet, but my older brother would often take me, to see. There was like a handful of movies I got to see. This and Alien, and I think Animal House. I forget, there was a few things I got to see, and yeah, when that scene occurred with the, with Igraine and Uther in disguise, and he's in full armor and he's like jumping on top of her, I remember just sitting there being like, what? It was
exactly.
Very shocking.
Silly English Kniggets. I mean, I remember seeing it. I actually saw it in the drive-in back when it came out, and I haven't seen it since, so it's all just a dim memory in the back of my mind. But a friend of mine at the time was really into knights and armor and all that kind of stuff, so I went to see it with him. And, I remember enjoying it. Maybe not enough to see it ever again, but I don't know. Maybe I'll have to revisit it, but...
You should check it out.
For me, Monty Python and the Holy Grail is so ingrained in my mind that I remember watching scenes in Excalibur and just laughing because I just kept thinking about Holy Grail the whole time.
There are a few moments, I have to admit, where I thought about Monty Python and the Holy Grail, because especially this last time when I watched it again, when the knights are questing for the Grail, and all the people are suffering and they're pleading for, help. And I'm just waiting for, somebody to yell out, I'm being oppressed or whatever. Somebody to
bring us a shrubbery.
Yeah. So I could see that.
So, yeah, I mean, I would be very apt to watch Holy Grail once again, but I don't know. Maybe I'll have to revisit Excalibur at some point.
If for nothing else, just visually, it's interesting to watch.
Well, I'll watch it with the sound down, and I'll put Holy Grail on. So I'll listen to Holy Grail and watch Excalibur.
Okay.
What I appreciate with these movies that we're going to be talking about today, this is pre-CGI. Mm-hmm. And so it's very interesting how they tried to accomplish some of the scenes. I mean, in Excalibur, when the sword comes out of the lake, when he throws the sword into the lake, the Lady of the Lake. Mm-hmm. those are kind of ingrained in my mind. And I think, there's a lot of flashy. I think, our kitten here in Gizmo would love that movie because of all the little sparkly things in the lake and the sword. But, it was the music. It was, there were so many moments where the music is just so integral to this movie, to most films, to be fair, but it's really memorable to a lot of these scenes. So if you guys haven't seen it, like Chief Engineer Bob, do yourselves a favor. I'm not sure if it's streaming or if it's probably $5 at Walmart, in the bin or something like that. But
well, I got to ask a question about the soundtrack, since this is all just hazy memories in the back of my mind. Is the soundtrack orchestral, or is it like an 80s synthesizer type thing?
It's orchestral.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very classical, and it's just very stirring because it's Wagner and a bunch of other classical composers that I don't know. But if you heard the music, you would probably recognize it because it's used in a lot of films and ads and other things. And it's all, very famous music, but the way it's used in the film is just really brilliant.
Yeah. That's my problem with the 80s films. A lot of them is just the fact that, especially if they were more low budget, then you get the, really cheap, what probably sounded amazing back then, but now sounds like cheap synthesizer type keyboard stuff.
Yeah.
There are some films like that, but yeah, Excalibur's one of the exceptions. What was the Knight's Tale? I think it came out in 2000 or...
Oh, with Heath Ledger. Yeah,
Heath Ledger, and it was like rock and roll music, and I just couldn't get into it.
I thought it was a cute movie for what it was trying to do.
Yeah. But Chief, you're safe. No synthesizers in this film.
Very good. Very good.
Speaking of Chief, why don't you segue us into your pick? One of your picks, Bob.
Well, I had two picks. One I kind of regret. The other I'm glad I watched. Let us start off with a regret, and that would be Highlander. And I chose it because it's a cult film, and everybody always speaks fondly of Highlander, and I hadn't seen it since I saw Excalibur, probably. So I decided to watch it, and I did a little research on it, as little as I could get away with. Highlander came out in...
Before you get into the research, Bob, did you see this at the drive-in?
Back in the day, I think I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, okay.
Surprising.
But it came out in 86. British film, actually. Gary Wyden, who wrote the script, he actually wrote the script for a class assignment in a screenwriting class at UCLA. And his teacher was like, this is really good. You should go get an agent. So he went and got an agent and actually sold the script for like $200,000.
Wow.
Kids, let that be a lesson to you. Always do your homework. Who knows what could come out of it? But the movie stars Christopher Lambert, and his previous role was in, anyone remember?
Greystoke,
The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes. And the director, Russell Mulcahy, discovered him from there. Basically saw a still. He didn't even see the movie. He saw a still of Lambert as Tarzan and said, who is this guy? I want him for my movie. And then you've got, of course, Sean Connery in the movie.
Bond. James Bond.
Egyptian Spanish pimp.
An Egyptian Spaniard. And I think it's funny because I was reading today that Connery worked with a voice coach for 4 hours a day working on his, quote, Spanish accent. And anytime Sean Connery's in a movie, whether he's a Russian submarine commander or, an immortal Spaniard, he always talks like Sean Connery. So I think that's probably why they changed and made him Egyptian, because he really does not sound like a Spaniard. Though he does have that look. He's got the cool D'Artagnan mustache and beard and that. But, he's still, as always, Sean Connery.
I think he and his voice coach were probably in the hotel bar most of the time.
Could be. And then Lambert's main enemy, the Kurgan, was played by Clancy Brown.
Very, very good.
Now, Clancy Brown had I don't know, I guess you could call it an amazing career, but he's done movie acting, TV acting. He was in movies like, of course, he was in Highlander. He was also in Shawshank Redemption. He was in Starship Troopers. He was in Promising Young Woman. He was in, let's see, what else? I've got a little list here. Where's his career filmography? Here we go. Bad Boys. He was in The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. That was like just before Highlander. He played the Frankenstein monster in The Bride, 1985.
That's right, yeah. With Jennifer Beal.
He was in Pet Sematary 2. He was also he also played a role of a gangster that was being pummeled by Flubber in the movie Flubber. And let's see. Oh, well, TV though, man. He was in, going back to movies. He was in Cowboys and Aliens, which we were kind of talking about before we started this episode. He's in the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. Television. He was in Earth 2. He was in Star Trek Enterprise, ER. Quite a few things, but he's really well known for voiceover acting, and his most famous role in voice acting is Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob SquarePants.
What? Who watches that show? Just children.
I'm telling you.
I'm thinking it's Lex Luthor.
But he did voices on Jackie Chan Adventures. He did Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce. I don't even remember that. Little Mermaid 2, he did voices for that. He did Thundercat. He was Groon the Destroyer in Thundercats. And Agent Silas in Transformers Prime. He was also Savage Opress, Count Dooku's apprentice and Darth Maul's brother in Star Wars Clone Wars. There you go. Got your Clone Wars in there. And quite a few things.
Back to Star Wars.
Lex Luthor in Superman the Animated Series. I mean, I could go on and on. There's like tons of roles. He played Mr. Freeze and Bane in the Batman cartoon. But so he's had quite a career, not just Highlander. But in Highlander, he actually made a pretty amazing foe, I do have to admit. He originally, I think in the script, they said he was supposed to be wearing like a suit and a bowler. But in the movie, he ended up like being a punk rock motorcycle looking guy.
He was pretty scary looking.
Yeah, no, definitely.
He was.
But and that kind of brings me as far as, having a foe, you've got to have sword fights, right? And that was kind of probably my biggest disappointment of the film. Because sword fight, I've seen better sword fights in like 1960s Japanese samurai films or something like that than this. I mean,
well, it's funny too, because like the sword trainer that did like Star Wars and a bunch of other films, Bob Anderson, was the guy who trained these guys. But I read. I guess he was a stunt double for David Prowse as Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. I think in Empire. But I don't know what it was. I mean, the whole film it's got fast pacing. It has quick cuts, and they mentioned that the director really kind of was it Russell McKay kind of patterned his directorial style after music videos, which were big back then. Well, he had done a bunch of music videos, so I think, that's what he was used to.
Yeah, but I don't know, for quick cuts and action and everything, and then the sword fights just kind of went by the wayside. But the other interesting thing about the movie is it's basically told in flashbacks. You start
a lot of it. Yeah.
A lot of flashbacks. The flashbacks were probably more interesting than the modern day stuff.
Yeah.
But Highlander kind of is what it is. I made it through.
Well,
I probably felt immortal because it seemed like a long time while that movie was going on.
Right?
What's that?
They live for a long time, and the only way they die is once they are decapitated in one of the fights.
Right, and that's the story probably basically follows all these immortals that are battling each other to see who the last man standing will be. And they have to decapitate each other, and then they suck in all this energy from their foe.
They absorb.
And like I say, it kind of is what it is.
One of the things I thought was interesting is, because they live forever, they form these friendships. And okay, well, I have to battle you now, even though we're good friends, may the best, person live, because, there can be only one. And then cue the Queen music.
Yeah. Queen music throughout. So if you like Freddie Mercury, then you've got that going for you in this movie. But if you don't, then give it a pass.
The other thing I thought that was interesting is not right away, but like 10 years later, they made a series. They had a Xena Warrior Princess series. They had the Hercules series, and then they came out with the Highlander series, which admittedly I never watched, but
they had a few sequel movies, and they had the series, but this bugged me kind of like The Matrix. It's like after the first film, you don't need a second or third movie. Mm-hmm. You're the one, it's like, but anyway. Or a TV series or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like they start with the kernel of a good idea, but then it's just poorly executed, right? It's just like this craptastic execution. And then, they went on to make these movies, but like the next movie, I can't remember the title of, I forget what it was, but then they totally rewrote everything and said, oh no, they're not immortals born on Earth, they're aliens. It's like, what? Wait, you just told us this whole thing, and then how are all the other immortals alive? And no, they're aliens. And then I think when they did the series, because I remember watching the Highlander series, and that was Duncan MacLeod. Then I think they went back to they're born on Earth and they live a really long time, and there can be only one. And I was like, man, these people don't know what they're doing with their property. They're just kind of floundering all over the place with it. But I think you're right. I think I was just going to say, I think the flashbacks are more interesting to see what they did in the past, how they lived their lives. Like there was the one scene in Highlander that I actually liked where MacLeod was in, I assumed it was America. Maybe it was Europe, but it was like the 17th century, and he was going to duel this guy with pistols, but he was drunk. Yes. And the guy just kept shooting him over and over again. Or first he was, I guess
keep stabbing him with a sword.
Yeah. And he stabbed him over and over again. And then he went to shoot him. And then finally MacLeod's just like, your wife is great or whatever. He apologized, and then he wanders off.
Yeah, but there's an extra scene supposedly in the European cut, which is actually the cut I saw on, I think it was on Netflix or whatever. Oh, no, it was on Amazon Prime. I guess it was the British cut, because in the British cut, he's stabbing him with a sword over and over and over. And then his assistant comes running up with guns and gives him guns, tells him to, shoot him. And he points a gun at his assistant, and the assistant starts running, and he shoots him in the back.
Oh, that's the one I saw too. Okay. That's that's not the theatrical version, or the U.S. theatrical version.
Yeah. I mean, I think they said there's 8 minutes cut out of the U.S. version, but all the scenes they mentioned were all in the version that's on Amazon Prime. So I guess we get the full British version on Amazon.
Indeed.
I mean, it's kind of interesting to watch, and also just because of Christopher Lambert's excruciating accent.
He had a voice coach as well.
Yeah,
both those voice coaches.
To fire those voice coaches.
Well, shall we segue away from Highlander?
Sure.
What
I think
do
we
you
should
got?
do that right now.
What do you got, Commander?
Sorry, I happen to be a Mr. Crab fan.
What do you got for us, Larry?
Well, I'm going to go over mine as Mr. Crab. No, just kidding. I had the dubious distinction and pleasure of watching Krull.
Oh.
Now, this was... and it's funny, I hadn't seen it for a while, and it wasn't available online. And this is the dedication that your Planet 8 crew has for you kids. I can't tell you how many times we dive deep in those bargain bins at the store, utilize online vendors to purchase, not a DVD, friends. I bought the Blu-ray of Krull.
Ooh.
Holy free holies.
This gem is from 1983. It was listed as a swashbuckler film, but there was more science fantasy to this than, and there was some sorcery actually. But anyway, it was directed by Peter Yates. And I was like, Peter Yates, God, that sounds familiar. He directed The Deep. My father loved that movie. It was Jacqueline Bisset, Nick Nolte. I remember he took me to the movies to go see it with him. But anyway.
He liked the Jacqueline Bisset T-shirt scene, right?
My father was a huge Jacqueline Bisset fan. So.
The underwater T-shirt scene. But I digress.
Yeah, so do I. But the movie's about a journey. Prince Colwyn, and he has a group of outlaws on the planet Krull. And so, when I watched this originally, it was at the Parkway out here on Park Boulevard. I thought Krull, like Conan. Conan is the name of the actor, the character. I thought the guy's name was Krull. Krull. He is the planet, and he's tasked to save the princess, the future queen princess, Lissa, from the bad guy in this is called the Beast. And if you look at the poster, you kind of see an outline of the Beast's face. I'm not sure who did the special effects in this, but one of the criticisms I will have is the Beast didn't really look that great to me in the movie. But this movie also had Liam Neeson, a young Liam Neeson in it.
He really gets around.
Let me tell you, he's paid his dues.
He has a particular set of skills.
Hey. I should say Kenneth Marshall was Prince Colwyn.
Hey,
I'm not.
You know what other big sci-fi franchise he was much later involved in?
Please tell me, because I didn't do my research like I should have. What else was he?
It shocked the hell out of me when I made this connection a few years ago. He was in Star Trek DS9 as a recurring character. He was Eddington. But without all those curly locks.
You're right. Wow. My mind is blown. Now I'm going to have to go back. Oh my God, he's Eddington.
Yeah, the voice.
Wow.
The voice gives it away, but yeah, he didn't have all his long blonde hair for sure.
That is hilarious. Sorry, listeners, for losing my mind there for a moment. It's a fun movie. He goes to look for. It's a weapon. God, what is that thing called?
The glaive.
The glaive. That's what it is. And he goes on a quest to find the glaive, and it's like this. It's like a throwing star almost, but it's huge. And it's in this cave, and there's like it looks. They were trying to, I think, make it look like it was sitting in some lava, and there's fire around it, and he doesn't have like an enchantment or glove. He just reaches in there and grabs it. But maybe he's the chosen one, so he was able to grab it and use it and toss it around. It's almost like this deadly boomerang thing. But anyway, Colwyn goes with his merry band of followers, and they go to rescue the princess, future queen, future wife. There's in the beginning of the film, there's this, it's like a prophecy that the narrator's going on about, there's a girl and, she's going to become a queen, and there's this prince, and they're going to rule the galaxy and all that stuff. So he knows what his quest is. We know what his quest is. And he has a wizard. There's a cyclops that they run into. And, it was the 80s. So they did the best they could for the Cyclops, effects wise. But a great actor. I should have wrote down his name. I don't have.
Mustn't have been that great.
What's that, Bob?
Mustn't have been that great.
Which
so great, I can't remember his name.
Yeah. So the group, the way to get to the fortress is to go through this black forest or cursed forest, but the force like changes, kind of like in Shang-Chi. Now that I think about it, how interesting. Anyway, the group travels to a swamp that cannot be crossed because the beast has like cursed it. But they manage to get across. They lose the wizard. There's this, I forget what they call them now. It's not an orc. They call them slayers. Slayers are like the soldiers for the beast. And what was cool is they get a hold of these Clydesdale horses, but they called them fire mares. And one of the cool effects is when they're riding the fire mares and they start like really galloping, there's these flames that build up around their feet. And it's one of the hokiest parts of the film for me, Cyclops. But I appreciate what they tried to do with the technology and the budget that they had. So they're riding the magical fire mares to reach the Black Forest before it teleports again. They survive. They get through. Colwyn and some of his followers, his group, get trapped inside a large dome, and he attempts to open a hole in the dome with the glaive. Because they can't find a passageway to get through it. And the three guys that are with them, though, they fall through an opening and are trapped between, like, these walls are, like, slowly closing in on them. It kind of reminded me of the Star Wars trash compactor. Mm-hmm. But this had huge spikes. Anyway, long story short, they get to the beast. He's able to figure out how to defeat him. He gets the queen. Well, the princess becomes a queen, and they just kind of walk away into the sunset. It was like a really abrupt ending to me. But what happened to the glaive? What happened to? Maybe they thought they were going to do a second film, but it never happened for whatever reason. Of note, we've been talking about music and soundtracks. Mm-hmm. The soundtrack was done by James Horner from Star Trek II. And I texted Karen when I was watching the movie. There was this scene with this spider creature. And, they're about to defeat the spider creature. And they play like the music from the Wrath of Khan, where like the Reliant is almost going to hit the Enterprise. Like, I was like, Karen, So anyway,
a lot of Horner stuff sounds similar. I mean, he also did Aliens.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you go into Aliens, it's the same deal. So
he likes that trumpeting horn. But it was funny because you texted me, and then a few days later I watched it, and I was like, it sounds exactly like Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was
funny thing is,
it's a good score. I mean, it's a really, it's one of the best things about the movie. I mean, I like Krull. I liked it when I was a kid, and it's really cheesy. I mean, it's so cheesy, but it's a fun little movie. And, it's like a typical, like, oh, we got to get this team together, and everybody on the team does something different. And,
it is cheesy. And I agree with you. The music kind of elevates it a couple notches. The acting was okay to me. I don't know. It's a fond film. I now own the Blu-ray version of it. And it's funny, when the Blu-ray came in, my wife looks at the cover and she's like, oh yeah, you could watch that one by yourself.
See, now I've never seen Krull.
It's a great film.
I've never seen Krull. However, after Larry's detailed plot synopsis, I kind of feel like I don't need to. I know what it's all about now.
You know what's funny? You know what? Basically, those fire mares, I could, you guys know me. I couldn't help but think, while they're hoofing away and running away, what if one of them farted and they'd get like a turbocharge, that would ignite the gas and. But anyway, yes, that is Krull. You're going to get a no prize, listeners, if you put on Facebook or Twitter the name of the actor who played the Cyclops. I feel kind of bad now because I did like that character.
They can go to Wikipedia and find that. I mean, come on, man.
Well, we'll let the listeners interact with us a little and maybe watch the movie too.
Well, should I go on to my next one, since you guys kind of have two that will blend together?
Sure.
I think so. Let's go back to Chief Engineer Bob. What do you got there, buddy?
Well, I got to watch a movie that I really actually enjoyed, and that would be Dragon Slayer. Probably because I'm all about the monster thing, but the Dragon Slayer kind of follows a young apprentice after the wizard is killed, and the young apprentice needs to go and basically save the village from the dragon, which he thinks he's done. He causes this huge landslide, and it's like, he's dead, he's gone. And when they're all celebrating, he comes back. And then he has to up his game to go up against the dragon. But the dragon in this thing is pretty amazing, I gotta say. But, I was kind of looking into some stuff. Now, this was actually a Disney Paramount co-production. And Disney handled the international distribution of the movie. And Paramount did the domestic release of the movie. Now, do you guys know what movie previously, the only other movie that Disney and Paramount combined on?
Before Dragon Slayer?
Yes.
One
of our Planet 8 favorites, Popeye. The Robin Williams Popeye movie. That was a Disney Paramount co-production. And then they went on to do Dragon Slayer. So two movies that are probably on the total opposite ends of the spectrum. But people, when this came out, people were expecting like a Disney family fare kind of movie. But the movie was rated PG because of violence and also brief nudity. Because we've got the one character played by Caitlin Clark, who at the beginning is a boy. And mainly her father disguised her as a boy because there's a lottery to select female virgins to basically sacrifice to the dragon. So, there's a scene where she's swimming in the lake and the young apprentice sees her, dives in the water, and gets a total shock when he sees what's underneath. But from that point on, she reveals herself as a girl and enrolls herself in the lottery. But going back to the effects and the dragon, the effects are by ILM, and the dragon was basically done by Phil Tippett. Now, Tippett had done Go Motion creatures for Empire Strikes Back, and also for Star Wars, he did the chess set. But Go Motion was it was a combination of animation and kind of rod puppet work. But he also did like a motion blur between frames, which made it smoother than your normal kind of jerky model animation. But the dragon itself was designed by David Burnett. And then the design was finalized by Phil Tippett. And then Phil sculpted a reference model, which Danny Lee and his crew constructed into various models, including a 16-foot head and neck, a 20-foot tail, full-size claws, and 30-foot wide wing assembly. Now, that's the beauty of the golden age of effects before CGI. I mean, you want a big dragon? You got to make a big dragon. But they had like 16 different models of this dragon. And then they actually used, and this is definitely the beauty of pre-CG, they used real World War II flamethrowers for the dragon's breath. Think about that. But yeah, there were like 16 models. And I was talking to Planet 8 friend and contributor Webster Colcord today, since he works for Tippett Studios. And I said, hey, is there anything at Tippett Studios left from Dragon Slayer? And he said, yes. Chris Walas made a 4-foot head and neck puppet that was used. And it has like bladders and everything else, so it could, make different expressions, wire work and bladders. That's still at Tippett Studios, as well as the Go Motion puppet that was used for the scenes where the dragon's crawling, where he's crawling out of the hillside and he's crawling across the land. So yeah, those are still there. He says Phil's thinking of selling those. So if you have like big buku bucks, you could own the dragon from Dragon Slayer. And let's see, what else can I say about Dragon Slayer? I mean, the effects are excellent. The flying scenes are kind of, sometimes they're good, sometimes not so good. Do you guys remember? Yeah. Do you guys remember the name of the dragon?
Yeah.
What is it?
Vermithrax pejorative.
There you go.
Such a great name.
Yeah.
That's still my favorite dragon, and even all the stuff that's come since the Hobbit movies, and I don't know what else. That's still my favorite dragon of all movies.
Well, Guillermo del Toro said the same thing.
I'm in good company.
He says you cannot beat the dragon from Dragon Slayer.
I'm a fan of Peach Dragon, so all right.
Well, they were nominated for Best Visual Effects, but they lost to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
They were also nominated, speaking of scores, for the Best Musical Score, which was done by Alex North. But they lost to a big bloated synthesizer soundtrack, Chariots of Fire.
Yep.
So speaking of 80s soundtracks with keyboards and synthesizers. So yeah, no, that was Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer, like I say, it was a lot of fun. I hadn't seen it in years, so it was a lot of fun to watch. And I'll probably watch it again because Lieutenant Debbie was kind of disappointed I watched it without her. So I said I would watch it one more time.
It's a really good one. And I remember seeing that as a kid and, seeing the dragon, especially those scenes where like Galen goes underground into the caves and there's all that, bubbling water and the gases and stuff. And he's like standing on a rock and then the dragon's head comes up slowly behind him. It was scary and exciting. And then the other thing about it is he isn't even really the hero at the end because his mentor,
Sir Ralph Richardson.
Right. He sort of comes back as like I don't know if he's sort of a spirit or sort of transformed or whatever.
Well, he's like a spirit, but then he kind of takes form. So he's like, he's back. But yeah, he basically turns himself into a bomb, blows up the dragon. Spoiler alert. But no, I mean, I'm really kind of disappointed that Ralph Richardson is no longer with us. Because if I ever did a story of my life, that's who I would want to narrate it. Just his voice and his delivery is just, it's amazing. That and in Time Bandits, where he plays the supreme being, just perfect.
Well, maybe, we're getting more advanced AI. Maybe it can just recreate his voice for you.
Yeah, well, they'd have to get the inflection and everything just right, but no, Ralph Richardson. So Ralph Richardson was great. In both these movies that I watched, so Ralph Richardson was a standout in Dragon Slayer, and the standout actually in Highlander was Alan North, who played the detective, and also played a detective in Police Squad. And in Highlander, his name is Frank. Leslie Nielsen was Frank Drebin in the Police Squad movie. But yeah, it was like the whole time I'm watching the movie, I'm like, he acts. It's like they pulled the character out of Police Squad and put him in Highlander. Because he's playing basically the same character. He's dressed the same, acts the same. Of course, he is the same. So, yeah, that was definitely a standout for that movie.
I think I'd have Clancy Brown narrate the story of my life. Before we leave Dragon Slayer, did you catch Ian McKellen, the Emperor from Empire Strikes Back?
Ian McDermott,
sorry.
Yeah, that was
he was
funny.
Something.
And it's amazing because he's so young, and then you figure out, man, he was that young when he was playing the Emperor. That's some heavy makeup on there.
Well, they didn't initially. He was not the Emperor in The Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
It was that I can't think of the actor's name, but he had those weird, like, googly eyes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You mean Marty Feldman? That would have been amazing. Marty Feldman is the Emperor
in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But still, I mean, he was a young actor, though.
Yeah, because Jedi was 82, right?
Yeah, so it's like 1 year. So it was actually 4 years?
83.
4 years.
83.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 1 year after Or yeah, there 2 years after. Let me count on my fingers. 2 years after Dragon Slayer.
Yeah. So he was still a young dude. But yeah, it was funny to see him be the priest, the holy man.
The holy man.
And he got fricasseed.
Yes.
Fricasseed.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, let's segue from Dragon Slayer up to the satellite. Karen, take it away.
Okay. Well, no podcast on 80s sword and sorcery films would be complete without mention of the classic 1982 Conan the Barbarian.
Conan. Cue music, Chief.
Get to the chopper.
with the great Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is another R-rated movie, and watching it, I realized, holy cow, yeah, it's an R-rated movie. It's a lot of violence in it. There's some sex scenes that I was surprised to see in it because I hadn't seen it in a long time. John Milius made it, and Oliver Stone wrote the script, and they're manly men, so their Conan is a manly man.
Look, I'll tell you, you go to a movie that says Debbie Does Dallas, it's not going to be, it's going to, got an extra rating for a reason. You got a barbarian, it's going to be rated R. I mean, that just goes with the territory.
Well, we'll talk about that with your pick in a minute. But the thing about this, I mean, obviously, like, Schwarzenegger seems, and I know a lot of Robert E. Howard fans say, oh, Schwarzenegger's not a good choice, blah, blah, blah. But I think in the popular view of Conan that came from things like Frank Frazetta's paintings or the Marvel comics, Schwarzenegger just looked like Conan. And I don't know who else was going to play that role at that time. It just was like a perfect confluence of events, So you've got Schwarzenegger, and then you've got this cast that's either like brilliant or insane casting. You've got James Earl Jones as Thulsa Doom wearing this like weird ass wig and blue contact lenses. You've got Mako as a sorcerer running around cackling and stuff. You got Jerry Lopez. Jerry Lopez was a pro surfer who was a friend of John Milius. And they said, hey, this role is perfect for Jerry Lopez. Sure, of course it is. Put him in the movie. Sandal Bergman, she was a dancer, but, she was tall, she was athletic. So, yeah, put her in the movie. And then
when we say dancer, she's more like a not a ballerina, but it was not like a
like
musical
show
dancer. She was like yeah,
like musicals and stuff. And then, like at the very beginning, you've got William Smith, Big Bill Smith, who had been in all these biker movies and stuff, and he's playing Conan's dad. I mean, everywhere you look, you're like going, oh, I know this guy. What is he doing in this movie? Or you're like looking going, who is this person? So the casting is just like bananas.
Whereas all the other films we talked about up to this point, we had no idea who these people were back in the day.
Pretty much. It was mostly unknowns, except, you had your Ralph Richardson here and there, Sean Connery here and there. But yeah, they just, this film, I mean, it took a while to get made. Milius had wanted to do it. They finally got the rights to do it, but they didn't really use like a lot of Howard material. Oliver Stone had some like really whacked out script that he put together, and they kind of hodgepodged it into a usable script. But it's an exciting film, and it's well made. I mean, I have to give them that. The production values are really good. It looks really, really nice watching it. I mean, it looks like a high quality movie, and they did spend money on this one. There's a lot of different locations, a lot of different things going on. You get to see Conan's story from, youth. It's a story of revenge and how he, moves through his life. And and progresses as a warrior from a slave, a gladiator to a free man. And I don't know, it's a really interesting story. Again, it's another one of these films that's helped by a strong score by Basil Polidoris. I might be butchering the last name.
Yeah. Great score.
Yeah, it's obviously, influenced a lot of the other movies that came after it. And unfortunately, a lot of those movies were just terrible. but I think Schwarzenegger he did what they asked him to do, basically. Mm-hmm. He was not a great actor, but he played this stoic warrior, and that's what they wanted. And hey, I enjoyed it. I hadn't seen this movie in probably, 10 years or more. I had the
oh my gosh.
I had the DVDs they had, and I pulled it out, and I was shocked to find out it was a flipper disc. Nobody makes flipper discs anymore. It had Conan the Barbarian on one side and Conan the Destroyer on the other side. And I was just like, what the hell?
Oh, I thought maybe it was one of those flipper discs that had like widescreen on one side and cropped on the other.
Oh, God. So, yeah, at some point I probably should invest in the Blu-ray. But it's a very entertaining movie. It's a little long, but, very enjoyable. And, I'm sure both you guys have seen it and you have something to say about it.
I'll just say that I did see it back in the day at the drive-in. That was the last time I saw it. I don't think I ever saw the second movie, but the first one, drive-in back in the day, hazy memory.
Okay. Well, Larry?
I know everyone, they think Schwarzenegger, they think Terminator, they think Governor of California. He's Conan. I mean, he had the physique, at the time Lou Ferrigno was doing the Hulk on TV. I'm not sure when they started filming Conan, if it was 80 or 81, but that's about the time that Lou was finishing off his stint on The Incredible Hulk on CBS on TV.
Didn't he do a Conan? Or maybe he was Hercules.
He was Hercules.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. And look, I've seen Lou at conventions and stuff. He's a nice guy. He's personable and stuff like that. I don't know that he would have, and I have seen him as Hercules, so no offense, Lou, but I don't know if he would have done Conan justice. I think Schwarzenegger's, I said his physique, but his accent, his facial expressions, when they throw him in that battle pit for the first time and this, warrior comes at him and just starts biting his neck, and he's like, oh, he's freaking out. That's how I would have reacted too, and he succeeds in that battle pit, and they start training him and educating him, and they're trying to get more children out of him that are like him. They want more warriors and stuff, so they'll introduce women to him and stuff, and he covers her with like furs and stuff, so all the owners of the slaves are looking and covers her, so he has respect. There's all this stuff that's in this movie, and the music, and I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the wizard. God, is it Mako?
I said Mako, but I think I'm pronouncing it like the shark. I don't know if it's Mako or Mako, to be honest.
Okay, well, great wizard in this, or mage, whatever you want to call him. This just Valeria. I mean, God, I'm not into blondes, but she was beautiful, and just their chemistry that they had. Seeing James Earl Jones as Methuselah Doom, and I hate snakes, so that was like even more, spine tingling, and I don't know. I really enjoy this film, and when they get the jewels and stuff, and he's drunk and face falls in the forge. When he's mad at the camel and he punches the camel out, and it's just such a good movie. I own the Blu-ray, DVD. I got the digital version so I could watch it when I'm traveling on the plane. I can't say enough. I have his his sword hanging up on the wall here next to me. A replica.
Do you have the Atlantean sword or the sword his dad made?
I have the Atlantean sword. This is the one with the two. It looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon, but they're meant to be like sea serpents, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he finds in the cave, and he's Crom.
Right. That's another thing. There was a lot of great design elements in the movie, and a lot of that was due to Ron Cobb, the artist who worked on a lot of other films like Alien too. So there's a unity of design throughout the film when you see like the temples and things, and they have these tall columns with designs on them, or not that costumes per se, but jewelry or other stuff. It's like they put a lot of thought and effort, and they had, Ron Cobb designing all sorts of sets and swords, and so it seemed like it was a realistic world. It wasn't like our medieval reality, but it was some sort of reality that you could buy into.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I'll admit I was not a big reader of the novels. I did read a couple of the comic books, the Marvel comic books. I think that version of Conan in the comics is iconic as well. And it was different from Arnold's look. I also love the way, the movie ended where, this Conan years later is king and he's sitting on his throne, and, the narration says, but that is a time for another, a story for another time. It's just, man, you really wanted to have a good sequel, but instead we got Conan the Destroyer. Just kidding.
Segue.
Go with it, Larry. Go with it.
It's like two different movies. I mean, Schwarzenegger came back for Conan the Destroyer, like 2 years later, 1984. Mm-hmm. And Richard Fleischer ended up directing this one. The story is by Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway.
Mm-hmm.
Who we had on the show, plug.
Who we had on the show. So I don't know what happened.
Well, I can tell you that Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway, while they wrote the original script, a lot of the stuff that they had in the original script was taken out or they were told to scale it down because of the budget. So they had a lot of stuff. Like they wanted to have, like this giant demon at the end, and they had giant monsters and other stuff, and they were like, we can't really afford it. So they had to take a lot of stuff out. And years later, they did produce a graphic novel that was true to their original script. So, there's a plug if anybody's interested what their original vision was. You can go look for that graphic novel.
That's interesting. Maybe it's because of the casting. We talked about the casting on the original Conan other than Schwarzenegger. And I think Schwarzenegger was kind of like a gamble for them on that, because at that point, other than Pumping Iron, I mean, Arnold is not the star that he is now. None of them really. James Earl Jones, the exception probably. But in this film, they had Grace Jones, who at the time was very popular.
Yeah.
Wilt Chamberlain. Yes, that Wilt Chamberlain. In his only acting role ever.
Well, they had a surfer in the first one, so they had to have a basketball player in the second.
Space Jam didn't come out till later, so that's really all basketball players had to do.
Yeah,
being Conan and old zombie movies.
They had Tracy Walter as like the comic relief. He played a thief, and at that point, why did they replace? I don't know. Anyway, they brought him in. Mako came back as the Wizard of the Mound, Akiro, and Olivia Diabo played the sacrifice, or Princess, I guess would be
the princess, yeah.
Title.
Well, and Sarah Douglas was the queen.
Sarah Douglas was the queen, yeah.
From
Superman 2.
Superman 2, yeah.
From Superman 2.
Oh, and one interesting thing I learned watching some videos. There was another very famous athlete, celebrity athlete, who was in the movie uncredited at the very end when Conan is fighting the
Dagoth.
Dagoth, thank you. It's obviously a dude in a rubber suit, but do you know who the dude in the rubber suit was?
I do. I'm a huge fan. But go ahead, Walker. Who? Bob? Do you any guesses?
Rosie Greer.
It's a good guess.
Almost. Andre the Giant.
Okay.
Yeah. But he wasn't credited in the movie.
Nope. He took no credit for this one.
I don't want to get the credit in this, Arnold.
He may not have wanted to admit he was in it.
This was a stinker.
Even Andre the Giant has standards.
Hey, Andre the Giant, man, there's a lot of good YouTube videos about, other wrestlers, Roddy Piper and Ric Flair telling stories about going to bars after matches with Andre. And I mean, they're hilarious. Andre took no crap from anyone, and the guy's larger than life. But I love Andre the Giant. I've seen him in matches here locally back in the day. And anyway, I can go on and on about Andre the Giant. So basically, the movie starts with Conan, not praying to Valeria, but just saying some prayers for her and stuff. And Tracy Walter, I think he was like in the Bob Newhart show or something, wasn't he? One of the brothers, or anyway, he's done like he reminds me of like Lenny and Squiggy, those kind of characters.
Right, he tends to play sort of ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah. So I will say that the names of the characters in this movie I love. So a comedy relief, Mr. Walter was Malik. And me saying it is not as pleasurable as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Malik! Broadening the vowels and the Malik. Grace Jones, she plays Zula, a barbarian of sorts. And then one of my favorites is Chamberlain, Bumbata. And he's like the guard of who, spoiler alert, ultimately betrays Olivia d'Abo's character. But she's like, Bumbata. And Schwarzenegger's like, where's Bumbata? The odd things that I find in these films. So this is not as serious as the first Conan movie. I mean, there was like dread, and there was danger, and there were witches and knives and fire and this is lots of blood. So this one, I don't know if it was PG-13 or PG, but they sacrificed a lot of the gore from before in the Conan film. So they need to go find this gem, and the queen's going to send them on their merry way, and they take Bumbata, and we find out that Bumbata has secret orders to kill Conan once the gem is obtained, once they find the gem. But it's in this fortress, protected by, surprise, surprise, a wizard. And so what they want to do is they want to get Akiro to help, but they have to go and rescue him from a tribe of cannibals.
That was one of my favorite parts.
That was great. And then that's where they bump into Zula, and she's like chained up, and they're like stabbing at her and stuff with spears, and Conan doesn't really say anything. He goes there and chops the chain and rides away, and Zula eventually catches up with them, and Wilt Chamberlain doesn't want her to help out. I guess he sees how much of a help she would be, and he's trying to sabotage everything because that's his secret mission. So eventually they get to the castle, and they're spending the night to try and figure out the castle's in the middle of this lake. And while they're spending the night, the wizard captures the princess, Princess Jenna, and so the heroes have to go to the castle and rescue her. And there's this really cool like mirror thing that's going on in this room, and so his friends are like watching through one of the mirrors, but Conan's like battling this like version of the wizard that's he can't really touch him with the sword. It's not a hologram. I guess it's like a reflection or something.
Yeah, I think it was like his real body maybe was behind the mirrors. It was a little weird. Yeah.
And then he finds out that by breaking the mirrors, he starts cutting and damaging the wizard. And, by breaking all the mirrors, he kills. And then the castle starts to like sink into the lake or whatever. So they're able to get away. Bombata is kind of like, these people start attacking them. These warriors are like, I don't know why they're attacking us. Excuse me. And it was really weird because I want to say Olivia Diabo was like 17 during this filming of this movie. And she has a romantic interest in Conan.
Yeah.
And, to his credit, he, kind of rebuffs her her advances, and he's still in love with Valeria. So there were some connective tissues with Akira and Valeria from the first film, but not many.
Does Maria Shriver know about all this?
What's that, Bob?
Does Maria Shriver know about all this?
Well, if she's listening to this podcast, she does now. So anyway, they go on their quest and they find the horn of Dagoth, and Conan rips the horn off of the Dagoth. They kill him, and the queen, Jenna, who is now the queen, offers all of them a part. Oh well, I'm sorry. They get the horn and he kills the evil queen, and Bombata gets it as well. But she offers them, to be part of her court. And Zula's like, offered like captain or something like that of the castle. And Akira is the advisor. Malik becomes the jester. Malik. And Conan, that's when he's like, nope, I need to rule my own kingdom. But that's for another story. Dun, 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 dun. It ends. One of the things I want to say between the two Conan movies that I did like is that the introduction, again, I mentioned it for a minute where it's the King Conan sitting on his throne. It ends that way as well, but that's a tale for another adventure.
They should have done it. I mean, they could try to do it now with Arnold, but I don't know if he could pull off the action scenes as a 70-year-old Conan.
They had him as a 70-year-old Transformer, or not a Transformer, Terminator.
Yeah. Well,
with CGI and stuff, and I don't know. I mean,
they might be able to do it. I really wish. Well, the original plan was that they wanted to set this up as a series, just like Bond, and every 2 or 3 years they do a Conan movie, right? But then, after the first one, they brought in, different people, obviously, like they brought in Richard Fleischer to direct, and they decided to water it down. And then Schwarzenegger wasn't that happy with the second movie, and he also wanted to try, doing different things. He was starting to rise in popularity, and it all started to unravel. If they'd made a good second movie, maybe they would have been able to make a franchise out of it, but who knows? But yeah, that King Conan would have been a really cool thing. Or they could even still do it with Arnold as like a framing device, where he's sitting there going, oh, did I ever tell you about the time, blah, blah, blah. And then they have like a young actor playing, Conan in the past.
Yeah. The adventures, past adventures or whatnot. At one point, they tried to relaunch the series, didn't they? And it was Jason Momoa, and that stunk.
I didn't even see that one, but I know.
Don't bother.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And then the rights went back and forth. There's a guy, I think I don't know if he's Finnish. Anyway, there's a guy in Europe who owns all the Robert E. Howard estate rights. And there's like a whole story about how he, let Millennium Films have the rights for a while, and they made that movie, and it was terrible. And then it went back to Universal for a bit, and they greenlighted King Conan back in like 2012 or something like that. It was after Schwarzenegger was no longer governor, and there was talk of like, oh, we can do it. But then after Terminator Genesis, whenever that was, then they were kind of, because that didn't do very well, then they were like, maybe we're not going to take a chance on Arnold. So it just kind of went into limbo, is what I have read. So, yeah, I don't know if we'll ever get King Conan with Arnold. It's a shame.
That's just too bad. Yeah. And the thing is I think the Destroyer, Conan the Destroyer, is a little more palatable, knowing that these are going to be the only 2 times you're going to see him playing this character.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of fun, and it's a little bit like the way they build the group. It's like a little Dungeons and Dragons team. We got the wizard, we got the thief.
That's a good way of putting it.
No. So it's enjoyable for what it is.
If that doesn't convince you to pop the or stream the Destroyer movie or pop for a DVD, Bob, I don't know what will.
Well, so I was listening to your description of the movie. I don't need to watch it now. I know every little bit of story from the movie, so I'm good.
Yeah, but you don't have the benefit of the music unless you listen to this and play the soundtrack.
Well, Karen should have been humming in the background then.
My humming skills don't do it justice.
Well, kids, I know there's going to be comments that we didn't talk about this movie or that movie. I'm sure someone's going to mention Beastmaster, 1982 classic, who was written and directed by Don Coscarelli, the creator of one of my favorite films, Phantasm, but that's a discussion for another podcast. Hey, we've reached the point in this podcast where we're going to have our censor sweep. And this go around, Chief Engineer Bob, you have something you want to share with us?
Oh, hello. Yeah. I'm going to do a censor sweep on probably the most expensive thing we've done a censor sweep on. How's that?
Ferrari.
I'm excited.
Nah. Stern Pinball and Toho International have come to an agreement, and they are releasing a Godzilla pinball machine.
Ooh, what the what?
That's right. And this thing is like, we'll post a link to it, or we'll post some pictures, but the play field is just amazing. There's actually 3 different versions of it. There's a, let's see, where is it here? It's, there's the Pro, the Premium, and the Limited Edition. So, let me see if I can find what's on the Premium and LE models. Mechagodzilla features a motorized 3-bank target set, which rotates to reveal a spinner and jump ramp. Players will engage in kaiju battle by launching pinballs with the jump ramp and blasting the magnetic ball catch on the chest of Mechagodzilla for multi-ball. But they have these just basically all these descriptions of, I mean, I've got the Creature from the Black Lagoon pinball machine, right? That thing came out in like 93. And this thing, it just has so many bells and whistles and ramps and things that, it just sounds pretty amazing. Not that I'll ever be able to afford it, but, you also have, it says the Godzilla pinball machine also debuts Stern's Insider Connected system, which includes a QR code reader on the bottom arch that enables players to interact with the game and this new network in a variety of ways. So it's basically interactive, which pinball machines really haven't been. There's only 1,000 of the LE machines available. The LE version, limited edition version, includes an exclusive full-color mirrored back glass inspired by Mechagodzilla, icon custom cabinet artwork, custom high-gloss metallic silver powder coated pinball armor, a custom designer autographed bottom arch, exclusive inside art blades, upgraded audio system, anti-reflection pinball playfield glass, which is something I've been wanting to get for my Creature pinball machine because I got so many lights around it that they just glare off the glass. I need to get some anti-glare glass for it. And of course, the obligatory certificate of authenticity. But this thing is available now. If you want the Pro model, it's $6,899. If you want the Premium model, it is $8,999. And if you want the limited edition, it's $10,499. So
I guess we're all chipping in.
Yeah, if anyone wants to donate to the GoFundMe by Bob a Godzilla Pinball Machine Fund, I'll put that up later. We'll have a link in the show notes. But I don't even know where I would put this thing. Like when I got my Creature from the Black Lagoon pinball machine, my friend that helped me get it, he's like, oh, once you get one, you're going to want more. You can't just get one pinball machine. I'm like, my house isn't big enough for more than one pinball machine. What are you talking about?
You'd find a place.
Well, maybe, but we'll see. Maybe I'll do a follow-up sensor sweep if I get one.
Okay, that would be interesting.
I just want to know what you're going to sell in order to get the pinball machine.
I'd probably have to sell my truck. Or
how are you going to move the pinball machine?
I would have to sell my truck or one of Debbie's kids in order to afford this pinball machine.
You value those kids there, Chief. That's good.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd have to figure out which one's worth the most on the market.
Well, I'm glad you came to your senses, Bob, and you weren't thinking about selling a kidney or a lung. So, congrats.
No, I kind of need those.
As we veer into Planet 8 After Dark territory.
Yeah.
Or black market territory.
That's right. If either of you find yourself in a bathtub full of ice, you'll know what happened.
And we see a pinball machine on them.
And Bob's over playing pinball.
Wait a second.
Well, kids, this was a fun episode. Again, listeners, if you want to leave any comments over on our Twitter, Facebook, over on planet8.com, and of course our YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. Until we meet again, stay safe.
On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.
Enough talk.
In life, to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women. That is